This is Weirdly Enough, your regular podcast for strange stories and amazing facts, delivered straight to your favorite podcast directory and at weirdlyenough.com. Now, here are your hosts, Andy and Len.
Hello, we're back again for another thrilling installment of Weirdly Enough with myself, Andy Kane.
And me, Leonard Johnson.
Hello, good to see you. How's life been treating you this week?
Not too badly, yeah. 2020 is a very strange year. I remember once seeing a thing on YouTube, a guy was giving a talk. It was about all matters conspiratorial. But he said that 2020, the theme of the talk was 2020 vision.
Right, yeah.
And he says, a lot of things are going to be revealed.
Right.
In 2020. A lot of things, you'll say things in a different way. And he was talking about aliens.
Right, okay.
But I think really, on a different level, everybody's saying
seen stuff
slightly differently,
Yeah, life has definitely changed over the last while. I saw a meme up on Facebook the other day that said, I'm not going to buy a 2021 calendar until I see the trailer.
Yes.
Yeah.
See if it's any good or not.
Yes. Don't buy the calendar just yet.
Talking of which, are cinemas open?
I think they are, yeah, certainly.
But presumably they're all socially distanced, and you maybe can't get those big tubs of popcorn and stuff.
There's a new film called Tenet is out now in the cinemas. It's an action thriller type thing. So that's the first thing that's been kind of released since lockdown and all of that. It's showing up in the cinema there in Dundonald and Newton Ards, Strand Arts Centre. This thing's obviously working out our location, which kind of gives the game away a bit as to where the podcast is recorded, but there you are.
Yeah, we don't really want the men in black coming from us.
No, certainly not, although I'm sure they wouldn't care too much. Well, what's this episode of Weirdly Enough all about then?
We're going deeper underground.
Oh no, everybody loves Jamiroquai.
Too much panic in this time. What, you don't like Jamiroquai?
Oh, I do, but you have to say you don't like them.
No way. I want to bring back the 90s, including JK. Anyway, we're not actually going to do a show about like 90s R&B.
Okay, right.
Or whatever he did.
Acid Jazz.
That
was the label that he was on anyway.
It's not actually a show about that.
Okay.
We're looking at secret bases.
Secret, military bases or other things
well,
too?
Generally military, but, all kinds of secret bases. Now, it's something that sort of has fascinated me for a while, and it sort of ties in the topics of this show. Area 51 is one example.
Area 51.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, nobody actually calls it Area 51. It's normally called the Ranch.
Yeah.
And formerly the National Classified Test Facility.
But it's not where they discovered the Roswell alien, is it? It's a different place.
Apparently it is a different thing.
Is it close by?
Let's see. It is quite close. Now, most American aircraft that were classified before they became publicly known have been tested and developed there. So it is, even if the sort of a whole Roswell thing isn't true, there is a lot of like genuinely secret kind of research that would go on in there, But what I find more interesting, to be honest, is a place you probably won't have heard of called the Dulce base or the Dulce base. Now, it's 5 kilometers north of the city of Dulce in New Mexico.
Right.
And what it is there's a guy called Phil Schneider.
Yeah.
Now, he gave a series of talks in the 1990s before his very mysterious death.
Okay.
Where he was talking about, he was like a contractor, and he was put in there to kind of help dig kind of underground facilities and whatnot. But in his story, he talked about how whenever him and his crew were out working in Dulce Space, they actually uncovered aliens.
Okay, right.
And it turned out that in Phil Schneider's story, the aliens actually were based in there. Yeah. And they were working with the US military, and the base is all on different levels. I think
all underground then.
All underground, yeah. And the deepest level was what they called Nightmare Hall, which was a bit scary because that's where they were keeping, people down there.
Yeah.
And doing sort of kind of horrible experiments, and it was a bit like the island of Dr. Moreau, because they were allegedly splicing the genes together.
Alien and human hybrids then were being produced.
So yeah, but I mean, obviously it's something we'll probably go back to in a future podcast, because it's a very long story.
But did that place ever actually exist then?
Well, according to Phil Schneider, it did.
Yeah.
Now, it was a bit of a weird one. Now, before his death, Phil Schneider alleged there's more than 1,400 of these underground bases all over the world, and they each cost about $17 billion to build.
Right, not cheap then.
Not cheap, and the 192 bases inside the US are also said to be interconnected. And he says that at one point there was a war broke out between the humans and the aliens in the base.
Right. How big was the base then? Was it huge? Massive?
Huge, like miles and miles and miles and miles. He gave detailed testimony about his work building the 7-level base, which extended 2 miles underneath the ground, and contained space for tens of thousands of human and alien prisoners.
Right.
He told of the Dulles firefight, telling of how his men found an enclave of Greys who fought back, leading to the slaughter of 66 Delta Force operators and Secret Service agents.
Yeah.
He said that he personally killed 2 Greys, the Grey aliens, before being shot by a cobalt weapon.
All right.
That unfortunately gave him cancer.
And what is that fire? Cobalt then, or?
Is that even a thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anybody has any scientific knowledge can maybe get on to us about that. Now, his story evolved over time. It started off with a very sort of basic story of what happened, but it became this whole kind of like mythos over time. And he talked of underground caves that apparently were occupied for centuries by these aliens. The caves have been taken over by the Rand Corporation for use by the New World Order to create biological weapons.
Right.
And he said there were fleets of alien ships stored at Los Alamos, human-alien hybrid cloning, and yeah, all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff going on down there.
I remember hearing about a secret underground base. I think it was in Antarctica. It might have been in the Arctic, but I think it was Antarctica. That was built by the Nazis apparently, and it went 20 miles underground, allegedly. Anyway.
Yes, this is Base 211.
Right.
Which apparently, because there was a documented Nazi expedition, and we're getting on to sort of like Indiana Jones territory a little bit, but there was an expedition in 1938 to Queen Maud Land region of Antarctica. Now the story goes that they mapped the area, but where it kind of departs from kind of recorded history is they say they discovered a vast network of underground caves that extended 20 to 30 miles underground. So they called it Base 211.
Right.
And what happened then was there was a very esoteric group called the Tula Society.
Okay.
Which is a documented thing, and kind of the rise of the Nazis. It was like an occult group. So apparently they took things over and started creating this huge kind of underground base.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, as the war went on, allegedly U-boats went down, and they kind of created all this, big massive base, and started doing experiments. Like the Wunderwaffe, as they call it, the wonder weapons. And then the story goes that Hitler actually escaped the bunker at the end of the war and escaped to the base. Now, there's 2 kind of stories of Hitler's escape. There's the one that was popularised in a book called Grey Wolf, and it's something you maybe might have heard of, where he escaped to Argentina.
On a train, a special train that went to a certain ranch.
Yes.
And there's a ranch that has a train station, yeah.
And the story was that Eva Braun got a bit pissed off with like living in the Pampas, living in the arse end of nowhere, basically. So she left Hitler, and he ended up marrying a local woman. And died in the 1960s.
Yeah.
That's the kind of less crazy version. The more crazy version is he lived out, he's still alive in Antarctica with the aliens that the Nazis actually discovered under the Arctic ice.
He had a good old innings.
Yeah.
What age was Hitler at the end of the war?
Well, he was mid-50s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he would be like the
must
oldest.
Be alien technology that's keeping him alive.
He would be the oldest man. Unless they cloned him, maybe that's another possibility.
Yeah.
The most kind of far out version of that story is that the aliens teamed up with the Nazis, and they went to the star system of Aldebaran.
Right.
And their little spacecraft.
Okay.
and kind of did their thing out in space. And what we see as UFOs is actually like the NASA's
Yeah.
coming back to kind of annoy us, basically.
Coming back, yeah. Because
Yeah.
they would do that, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. It's all about wacky. But yes, now there's a guy I've come across called Richard D. Hall on YouTube, and he's very good. He's done a few investigations into, and also a guy called Miles Johnston, who is actually from Lurgan in Northern Ireland.
All right, okay.
And he had a website called the Bases Project.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how he started out, kind of investigating bases in the UK. So he's kind of into this big thing. Now, there's a guy called Alan Turnbull that was interviewed by Richard D. Hall, and he has a website called www.secretbases.co.uk.
Yeah.
And he's appeared on Sky Channel 200 and Edge Media TV. Now, his thing is actually quite interesting because he's not about aliens and about all the wacky stuff. His thing is, now if you look at his website, you might kind of be a bit confused because it's not like a kind of like Wikipedia kind of version of secret bases. It's actually like tools for you to research.
Yeah.
Kind of how to like investigate secret bases, and it's like it's all kinds of things. It's like all the Cold War installations that they put in like London, the underground and stuff like that, and you know like Royal Observer Corps. So it's not about the aliens and about space Nazis and all that kind of stuff. It's more down to earth, kind of actual. It's almost more like Subterranea Britannica. Yeah. If you ever come across that website, Subterranea Britannica, which is to do with all kinds of underground stuff, including military stuff, and it would go into things like, you know, Cold War bunkers and all the stuff that the Germans built on the Channel Islands during World War II. So it's more kind of like actual history, you know.
Yeah.
Now the other claim is the Dark Side Moon Base. Now there's a community of people that believe that various factions have built moon bases. And
right.
You know,
on the other side, the dark side of the moon.
Yeah. Now, sometimes, depending on the stories, it's the Nazis or aliens or Martians, or a big one now is the idea of the secret space program.
Yeah.
Which would be like elements kind of within the American military industrial complex had like what they call black budgets.
Right.
And sort of amassed all this money in secret and kind of created various installations and just haven't told people about it. So it's a bit more like, you know, if you remember that film Moonraker, you know, the James Bond film, similar kind of idea to that, you know.
It's getting a bit Alan Partridge, but fascinating, you know, that these bunkers can be so deep. If that's real, if that's true.
Well, bunkers, I mean, there's like Cheyenne Mountain Complex, which is, I think, is where the Americans have their main kind of base if there's a nuclear war, and it is about like a mile underground because it's built into like a big a big mountain, and that is like a real thing. Yeah. So I mean, and then if you look at the Channel Tunnel and stuff like that, I mean, the technology is there to kind of go pretty deep underground. Yeah. But I suppose the whole thing is, how would you hide it? Because the bigger something is, the more difficult it's going to be to hide. Yes. Because it's physically going to be bigger. There'll be more people involved who then have to stay quiet. I mean, it's one thing to like build a little tiny bunker somewhere. Be easy enough to do. Yeah. But if you're building like vast underground bases, it's obviously gonna come out in the wash. You know, so I suppose that's the thing, you know. On
the same topic, one thing that's come out this week, it was in the media there. CNN reported the 21st of August. It's this secret submarine base in the South China Sea. It's on the Hainan Island, and you can see it on Google Images if you look up. I don't think we can reproduce the pictures, but if you look up Google Images, you see the submarine. They reckon there's space for 20 of these submarines, but at the minute maybe China only maybe has 3 to 5 nuclear powered submarines, but the capacity is growing, and they reckon there's this huge base under this island and caves under this island where they can mess about with their subs. So yeah, very interesting to investigate that and have a look at that, see what's going on.
Yeah. Secret bases.
Yeah, secret bases.
I think we need a secret base for this program, to be honest.
One thing we talked about on a previous podcast, the Woolwich Tunnel
yes,
thing. You know,
yeah.
you talked about that and the portals of London and everything like that. I was listening to an interesting podcast recently, No Such Thing as a Fish. It's the guys behind QI, an episode that Sandy Toksvig was on a couple of weeks ago. Or maybe it was just last week actually. No Such Thing as a Cardigan for Ginger Rogers. The podcast episode was called, but they talked in depth about all the rivers that are under London and where they terminate, and how a lot of the tube stations, like Fleet Street, is the Fleet River, and there's tunnels in the London Underground with rivers actually running through them and running through in giant big metallic tunnels running through the platforms of the underground. So yeah, quite a lot of and there's places you can go on different embankments on the Thames where you can actually see where these kind of tunnels that are rivers that are now culverted underground come into the Thames and stuff. So it's a good thing to check out. No Such Thing as a Fish if you like your weird stuff. That's a good one to look at, because I was listening to it and I was thinking, oh, that's something we could cover. And then they went into it in so much detail. I thought, well, they've done it now. So if we did this, it would just look like plagiarism. But yeah, an interesting one to check out. The Rivers of London. I think it was a book, wasn't it? By, can't remember who it was now, but Rivers of London was some sort of weird fiction.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, going forward, I think it's something that I'd like to kind of maybe cover in greater detail in the podcast. Northern Ireland. Do we have much in the way? Because we don't even seem to have many bunkers, because you get these stories in the Belfast Telegraph, for example, and they'll be talking about, the Cold War bunker in Ballymena. And it turns out it's not actually a bunker, it's just like a wee kind of reinforced concrete building. You know, it's not like a big kind of what you can imagine there's been a big underground bunker.
Well, that thing there is what you're talking about.
It's not really,
it's
not really as exciting.
I believe it had its own TV studio and everything like that. It's a huge complex actually. That underground bunker, and quite interesting. There's the BBC radio studio inside a space for a lot of people to live. You know, some of it's above ground, but there is perhaps stuff underground as well. That's down in Ballymena. That bunker was for sale. Don't know if anybody ever bought it. It would be great if it had been bought and turned into something that people could go and walk around, have a look around, rather than just maybe being bulldozed and turned into an industrial estate. It is part of an industrial estate down there in Ballymena. I think it's like Woodside's industrial estate or something.
It's not really a sacred base as such, but one thing that I came across, have you ever heard of the Seed Vault in Spitsbergen?
Oh yes, yes.
Where it's supposed to be like, there's like examples of seeds from like all the planet, the stuff in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So if there's ever some sort of cataclysm, you can just dip into the Seed Vault and kind of start all the farming again. Yeah, that's quite an interesting one.
You kind of think, is there any point to it? Because if there's that much of a cataclysm, are we even going to be here? But I suppose it's comforting.
The thing is,
to think it's there.
We won't be here.
Yeah,
but they might be.
Oh yes.
So if they, because it's not we that is. Like you and me, like I mean, like I couldn't just rock up to the Seed Vault and bang on the door and say like, did a bit of gardening. Gonna land us some seeds that they're gonna tell me to jog on. They're gonna set the dogs on me. Yeah. It's obviously for if something did happen, maybe intentionally.
The event.
The event. And if they wanted to kind of just reset, reboot everything, then they'd have all their wee seeds ready to rumble.
Ready to go. Maybe they could plant them on Mars, like that film, The Martian.
Indeed.
Yeah, anyway, this has been fun. We'll be back very soon with a few snippets of things I've found in the news that I think are rather weird. So the pandemic has caused a lot of stress, hasn't it? A lot of people are getting stressed. There's a lot of mental health issues coming out of it.
Well, some people might say it's a rapidly evolving situation. Others have compared it to the sword of Damocles.
It's hard for people to relax during it all. Some people, I don't know, especially people like going out and stuff. Well, a group of Japanese out-of-work actors, and there's a lot of Japanese out-of-work actors, as there are from every nation.
I wouldn't want to be a twirly at the moment.
A what?
A twirly.
What's that?
You do a twirl. A theatrical person.
Oh, right.
Somebody who
Lovely.
Treads the boards, yes, a lovely. Yes, a twirly.
A lot of these out of work actors have come up with a solution to help melt away those stresses and worries. Basically, for a few yen, they'll put you in a transparent coffin for 15 minutes while actors masquerading as the undead dance around and poke you with fake hands or squirt water at you.
In what way would that be relaxing?
I don't know. It's the brainchild of Kenta Awana. He's from a production company called Kowagarasetai. Hope I said that right. They're also known as the Scare Squad. He said, the pandemic is stressful. We hope people can get a bit of relief by having a good scream. So it's a bit like that Icelandic thing where people scream and it goes out on the speakers.
So where do you do this? Do you go to a place, like a studio?
Yeah.
You get in a coffin?
I don't know if it's a studio. I think it's like, I don't know.
A warehouse?
Yeah.
Right.
And there's these people like made up with, eyes falling out and stuff, blood in their faces, pretend to be zombies, and they come up and scare you a little.
I'll give that one a miss.
A bit of a scare. You ever seen those escape rooms? It's a bit like that escape room, but on a more kind of extreme level.
They've actually come back now. Obviously, they're having to do their, you can only do it if you're in your bubble and all us cobblers and. But some of the things like quite interesting.
I've always been really interested in going, but anytime, and like, I wouldn't say I suffer from claustrophobia. I wouldn't like to be locked in somewhere, but it doesn't have it's not a problem for me because I imagine there is a way to get out if that happens.
What did sort of put me off is, bizarrely enough, I listened to a comedy show on Radio 4, and in one of the episodes, the characters go to a panic room.
Right, yeah.
And the person that's kind of managing the panic room has a heart attack and dies.
Yeah.
And they're stuck in the room, so then they have to kind of figure their way out. And I suddenly thought, well, what if that happens?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
True, yeah. But I think there's one in Belfast. Yeah.
I think there's several. There's one up to road.
All right.
And then there's
one
up here,
yeah.
And then there's one.
Oh yeah, I know where that would be.
There's one down by the KFC, bizarrely enough, in Shaftesbury Square.
Right.
And it's kind of weird because you get all these kind of youths going in for their fried chicken and chips, and then you get punters sort of in and out of the panic room as well. It's a bit weird. Like.
This is a bit of a personal question, but what's the most you'd spend on a sheep?
It depends what I'm doing with the sheep.
Well, if you were wanting to breed from it, if it was a ram and you were wanting to breed from it.
In a farming capacity. I have no idea.
A pedigree Texel lamb has sold for an eye-watering £367,500.
See, I don't know how much sheep costs, so I've no benchmark.
I would say that's a lot. That's at an auction in Lanark, Scotland this week. The bidding started at 10 grand, but it went 367,000. The ram was bought by a consortium of buyers, one of whom, Jeff Aitken from Proctor's Farm, said that the sheep, who's called Double Diamond, was a special animal. He said I knew he was going to be a lot of money, but I wasn't expecting him to make that much. Double Diamond will begin his exciting career of travelling around farms, meeting lots of lady sheep.
Lovely.
There you are. And have you heard of the South Atlantic Anomaly?
No, I haven't actually.
Planet Earth has lost almost 10% of its magnetic strength over the last 2 centuries, and now a large localized region stretching between South America and Africa has given scientists cause for concern. The magnetic field is essential to life on the planet, and weakness will cause dangerous solar radiation to penetrate closer to the Earth's surface. Geophysicists Terry Sabaka and Weijia Kuyang from NASA are using the European Space Agency's swarm satellites to investigate what has been called the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's believed it's caused by processes inside the planet where molten metal rich in iron churns 1,800 miles below the surface. The anomaly has implications for the International Space Station, where although the astronauts are well protected, sensitive instruments on board are impacted as the station passes the area. Scientists speculate that the weakness of the field could indicate that the north and south poles are about to flip. This is something that that's happened many times throughout the planet's history and takes a couple of centuries to happen. And it usually occurs every 250,000 years or so. So apparently we're overdue this thing happening where suddenly the magnetic pole is the South Pole rather than the North Pole.
What would that actually mean? Would you notice, do you think, or would it cause issues? Or?
It doesn't seem to have caused issues throughout history.
But then we've never been so electronic.
It's all the technological stuff. So yeah. There you go. Thanks very much for listening. We'll have another podcast out hopefully again next week. Remember, we've got a load of ones up there if you do want to search and subscribe for Weirdly Enough on your favourite podcast directory. We've got one about John Teeter there last week. Mystery Airships, the Woolwich Tunnel Anomaly, Mandela Effect, Loftus Hall, which is a haunted house down in Ireland, Time Slips, Men in Black, The Hum Micronations, Hollow Earth. All those podcasts are up now and available for you to download free from your favourite podcast directory or over YouTube. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening to Weirdly Enough. Remember to subscribe to get the latest edition as soon as it drops. And don't forget to leave a review. Email us about anything we've discussed or with your own weird tale at podcast@weirdlyenough.com.